Chapter 3. Élodie Granier walked through the corridors of the International Olympic School of Sports, her mind racing. She had just spent hours analyzing the selection committee's rules for the Olympic Games, and her heart was pounding at the thought of sharing her discovery with Léon. She quickly crossed the main hall, ignoring the curious looks from her classmates, and headed towards the football field, where she hoped to find him. But instead of Léon, she found Paul sitting on the substitute's bench, his face closed off and his gaze fixed on the ground. Seeing him, Élodie felt a surge of frustration. The last thing she needed was a confrontation with Paul. "Paul," she began, trying to keep her voice neutral. "Have you seen Léon? I need to talk to him about something very important." Paul looked up, his expression icy. "What do you want with him?" His voice was cold and distant. Élodie felt a twinge of anger, but forced herself to take a deep breath. The urgency of the situation outweighed their personal differences. "It's about the selection committee's rules for the Olympics. I've found a loophole, something that could change everything for us." Intrigued despite himself, Paul lifted his head slightly. "Really? What is it?" "It's not just the average performance of the school that counts," Élodie explained quickly. "What's crucial is the narrow gap between students in all subjects and sports during official tournaments. If the best students leave the others far behind, it will disadvantage us greatly." Paul frowned, trying to grasp the significance of this revelation. "So even if we have champions, if the rest of the team doesn't keep up, we're doomed?" "Exactly," confirmed Élodie. "We need to make sure everyone improves, not just the top performers." At that moment, a deep and authoritative voice spoke behind them. "Well, that's a perceptive analysis, Miss Granier." Élodie and Paul turned to see Professor Stéphane Roux, his piercing gaze observing them with characteristic intensity. "You are right. To maximize our chances, all students must reach a homogeneous level." He stepped forward, his austere face softened by a glimmer of encouragement. "You know, in my youth, there weren't as many teachers to guide us. We had to learn from each other. Maybe that's what you need to do now. Become mentors for your peers and help them improve." Paul and Élodie exchanged a glance, a new understanding forming between them. Their quarrels suddenly seemed insignificant in the face of the enormous challenge ahead. "We're going to have to work together," declared Paul, his voice filled with resolve. Élodie nodded, her eyes shining. "Yes, we must be united if we want to succeed." The professor smiled, satisfied to see this spark of cooperation. "Good. Start by identifying the students who need the most support, then create personalized training plans to help them fill their gaps." Élodie and Paul now had a common goal, to ensure their school's qualification for the Olympics, and for that, they had to set aside their personal differences. As they parted ways to begin their mission, Élodie felt relieved. Perhaps this crisis would be the opportunity to regain their past camaraderie. For several months, Palmaroux had transformed into a hive of collaborative activities. Every student had taken to heart the role of becoming a mentor for their peers, aware that their individual success now depended on the collective performance. The sports fields echoed with cheers and exchanged advice, while the classrooms buzzed with animated discussions about strategies and techniques. Léa, determined to excel, had agreed to take tennis lessons with Damien. The tennis academy offered a perfect environment to refine her skills. Yet each session with Damien brought its share of tensions. Léon, on his side, watched this closeness with growing irritation. He respected Léa's choice, but a part of him couldn't help but fume. Seeing her so close to Damien, hearing the shared laughter on the tennis courts, all of it made him jealous, though he wouldn't admit it. One afternoon, as Léa finished an intense session with Damien, the latter couldn't help but criticize her friends. "You know, Léa," he said, wiping the sweat from his forehead, "you're much better than most of your teammates. Why stay with them? You should join the academy. It's the royal road, not the one for commoners." Léa, already tired from the training, felt anger rising within her. "Damien, you really don't understand what's happening here, do you? We're working together to improve, to ensure everyone succeeds. It's not just about individual performance." Damien shrugged, his arrogant smile glued to his lips. "You're naive, Léa. The world will never work like that. You have to think of yourself first." Exasperated, Léa replied, her voice trembling with anger. "You think you know everything, but you're just a selfish person incapable of seeing beyond your own interests. I don't want to be like you." Damien's face darkened, and he retorted with disdain. "Little girl, you don't understand anything about the reality of the world." At that precise moment, Léon, who had been observing the scene from a distance, decided to intervene. He stepped forward, his fists clenched, his muscles tense with restrained rage. "Shut up, Damien." Damien turned to him, a mocking smile on his lips. "Oh, look who's here, Renard the knight in shining armor for Leia. And what are you going to do, tell me?" Léon, usually so calm and reserved, stood in front of Damien, challenging him with his gaze. "Maybe to give the school an extra chance, I should show my progress too by beating the academy's captain on his own turf. I challenge you, Damien. A tennis match. You against me." A heavy silence settled, the students around them stopping to watch the confrontation. Damien burst into laughter, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of nervousness. "Very well, Léon, if you insist on embarrassing yourself." Leia, although touched by Léon's intervention, hid her emotions behind a mask of neutrality. She walked away without a word, but as soon as she was out of sight, a satisfied smile spread across her lips. Léon had defended her with a strength she didn't know he had, and it warmed her heart. The challenge was set, and the palpable tension promised an epic showdown. Léon, feeling the weight of the gazes on him, took a deep breath. He had to win this match.